What is his motivation? Where can you get into his head a little for me?
Well, no, but I'm not a huge fan. I don't know. I think a lot of what people do on both sides is motivated by seeking money and fame.
Mm-hmm. But what? This is the way to do it? This is how? I mean, couldn't he still be on Fox?
Now, look, I mean, he went over there and said, you know, Moscow is this amazing city because the trains run on time.
Right.
I'm like, isn't that what they said about Hitler
and Mussolini?
Yes. Mussolini,
yeah.
like a fascist. Like, right. Okay, so the trains run on time, but people are being literally, killed in prison because they have an opinion. That's not a great country.
I think you can say.
When CA questioned the reasons behind those who publicly defend Russia while disregarding its well-documented crimes, Ann Coulter and Bill Maher engaged into a heated disagreement during a spirited panel discussion. CA speculated that such rhetoric may be driven by personal and financial benefit. She also attacked what she saw as hypocrisy on the part of self-described patriots who back authoritarian governments. Never one to back down from a battle, Maher bolstered the point by drawing parallels with former Nazi sympathizers. This exposed significant ideological divides and reignited the debate over political speech's moral consistency. Watch the development of this fascinating discussion by tuning into Sub 3.
This abortion is really hurting Republicans. I don't think you can blame all Republicans for this. I'm glad it was overturned by the Supreme Court. I think I'm a pro-life zealot. I think it was disgusting to call that a constitutional right, but it has been sent back to the states. That's all we ever wanted. And guess what, fellow pro-lifers? We're getting slaughtered. There have been 7 direct-to-the-people votes, and the tiniest restriction on abortion loses overwhelmingly in Montana, in Kentucky, states that Trump won, but Kansas, 20 points, and it isn't Republicans per se, I think, pushing this. It is these pro-life zealots who they don't care. I'm going to be pure. And did you see my write-up in the Catholic Insights magazine? And, you guys, you're like the corporate Republicans who will not give up on their cheap labor. We have to tell them, we can give you some things, but we can't give you everything, or we're just gonna lose.
Well, what a great way to end this segment, because I got 5 seconds. Perfect timing. Thank you, CNN. Thank you, Donald, and see you next week.
The political ramifications of reversing Ion versus Y have been extensively discussed, particularly with regard to the potential impact on the Republican Party's electoral chances. Bill Maher and Van Jones argue that the ruling has backfired, citing substantial GOP defeats in ballot initiatives even in conservative areas like Kansas, Kentucky, and Montana, despite Republicans' long-sought Supreme Court triumph. Voters have reacted quickly, rejecting even mild curbs on abortion at the polls. She realizes the political unpopularity of draconian abortion restrictions and publicly condemns pro-life extremists for ignoring the wide-ranging electoral effects. She is a staunch pro-life champion. She warns that an uncompromising stance might continue to cost Republicans races, even if she respects the Supreme Court's decision to send the subject to the states. Esther stresses the need for pragmatism and argues that the movement must find a balance between ideological purity and what people are actually willing to accept. This discussion exposes a deep internal rift inside the Republican Party. The challenge of striking a balance between deeply held beliefs and reality has become a political liability, even though overturning Roe was a historic conservative victory. This means that the government must navigate a complex environment where public opinion on abortion is far more nuanced than party platforms often reflect.
I can say that people are motivated by money and fame if they were on Fox News. The Fox News that then had to pay $700 million in defamation. I would say you can read it on my Substack first, or wait for Fox to pay a $700 million defamation judgment.
Gene, what explains the gender divide in politics? Why are young women skewing, oh yes, I've read this, more liberal, like by 30 points? Then young men are getting more conservative and young women are getting more liberal. What is your generational view on that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's from a big national survey of 18-year-olds, and young men have become considerably more conservative over time. Young women a little bit more liberal. So there's just a growing gender gap when it comes to that. The why question is always a hard one to answer in any of this type of research. It could certainly maybe have something to do with abortion rights. It may also be on the right, the existence of Andrew Tate and some of those commentators who try to make masculinity into this almost game that young men may be responding to, even though that's maybe not the way they should.
The increasing gender gap in political affiliation, with young men becoming more conservative and young women becoming more liberal, is a reflection of profound cultural shifts. Two significant factors that Dr. Jean T.W. attributes to this discrepancy are the prevalence of abortion rights, which appeals to young women, and the influence of people like Andrew Tate, whose hyper-masculine rhetoric appeals to young men. These patterns demonstrate how contentious social issues and influential people shape the political beliefs of younger generations. Bill Maher claims that whereas males have traditionally been linked with physical labor and blustery skills, these conventions have been shaken by the transition from a labor-based economy to an information-driven culture. Have become less important in society, while communication and teamwork, areas in which women frequently excel, have increased in significance. As a result, many young men feel alienated and underappreciated, which encourages them to adopt conservative views. Jones adds another layer to the discussion by saying that progressive rhetoric often frames masculinity as inherently toxic, pushing young men who might otherwise lean liberal toward conservative spaces, or people like Tate who validate traditional masculine identities without inclusive narratives or positive role models. Young males may feel increasingly alienated from progressive organizations as the political divide grows.
I also think that there's something happening on the progressive side that it feels like almost all masculinity is considered toxic.
Right.
And so I think the young men may not feel welcome. Like if you're
True.
In other words, I don't think it's much of a pull of an Andrew Tate, though that's playing a role. I think it just may be a push. Like if you show up and you want to be just like a regular, guy's guy, you just may not be eating enough kale and doing enough yoga to fit in on the left.
Just being a man is a little suspect. Yeah, no, and I think this winds up being not good for women either, because I don't think women like that. Well, I mean,
Right.
I mean, the rhetoric may be one thing, but at the end of the day, I know we're all gay and we're all fluid now and we're all trans and we're nobody, but a lot of people are still the old school. There wasn't
The old school from 12 years ago.
well, there was, there was a default setting, and a lot of women, I think, still want a man to be a man, not an abusive man, but just a man.
Yes.
Yes, I remember. Hey, cancel. How dare you?
Many young men feel alienated as their historical roles become less important due to society's significant challenges to traditional masculinity. The panel talked on this increasing divide, pointing out that in an economy that values intelligence and communication, areas in which women often excel, traditional masculine qualities like physical strength and hard work have been diminished. Many young males have thus had difficulty establishing themselves in a rapidly evolving society. An important player in this discussion is Andrew Tate, whose hyper-masculine philosophy has made him a powerful and divisive voice. Young men who are seeking meaning and approval in a culture that rejects their conventional masculine duties may find resonance in his message. But his language has come under fire for encouraging toxic masculinity, which has complicated the discussion of what it means to be a modern man. Men are experiencing an identity crisis as a result of the gender gap being widened by the decrease of physical work and traditionally male-dominated jobs. They lack social recognition for their changing contributions and clear positive role models. Many young men feel alienated as a result of society's problems with these conflicts. This sense of dislocation has led many to adopt conservative views or to individuals like Tate who advocate for a return to traditional male ideals. There are still important questions that need to be addressed, such how to define masculinity in a way that encourages inclusivity and welcomes change, and what role modern institutions should play in assisting young men in discovering their role in the contemporary world. What are your thoughts? Don't you dance? What do you think?